Hello everyone, welcome back to another Star Trek New Horizons tutorial with Cornish Ratbeard and myself. Today we are going to be looking at Empire starting conditions. Before we begin, remember if you like this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to both of our channels for new Star Trek New Horizons content and guides and tutorials. In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at the starting conditions of the Delta Quadrant, which we can safely define as being this quadrant here. So everything from here above. So let's start up here. So in fluidic space, which I will include as part of the Delta Quadrant, we have the Undine. The Undine start with one single planet called Limin, which looks like this. So they start with 22 pops. They have 2 city districts already built, and these buildings, which includes things like the Undine Hive Arena, the Undine Research Pool, and the Undine Invasion Pod. In addition to that, they have a starbase here, the System Starbase, that starts at 2,500, and they already have a fleet of 4 ships, which are Bioscout vessels. We can take a look. This is what the Bioscout looks like. So, additionally, in the system, they do have the Orman colony, which has 4 pops here, and 1 large-scale hydroponics field that has been built, but otherwise nothing else has been developed on this colony yet. Additionally, there are 2 more planets that could be colonized. There is Rakia 1 and Skimmer, which in fact starts an event chain for the Undine to meet eventually the Undine who are in this system. So if you have a look, this is fluidic space. Most of these systems are connected to each other, so the Undine will be in this realm until the invasion, which happens when the Borg try to invade fluidic space. Moving on to the rest of the Delta Quadrant, from going back to this view, we will work from this way round. So up here, we can see that the Haakonian Order starts in the Haakon system, or Haakon system. The system looks like this. There are several planets here, I believe up until 7, and the starting resources will of course vary depending on the randomization conditions, the random number generators. They start on the planet Haakon and have no colonies or any other controlled planets. They start with 20 pops. They already have 6 city districts built and already have some basic buildings built. The Haakonian Order do not have any unique buildings that have already been built on their planet. Again, 20 Haakonian pops and some defensive armies that are there as well. Next, the Talaxian Talaxian Commonality. The Talaxian Commonality starts in the Talax system, and they have both the planet of Talax and potentially the moon of Rhinax, which can be colonized immediately. The Talaxians also start with 20 pops and a series of defensive armies. Again, they have 20 pops, all of which are Talaxian. And they also start with a similar set of buildings as the Haakonians. Generally, most empires, unless they have special buildings, will start with one of each of these buildings. So a large-scale hydroponics field, civilian industrial center, alloy foundry, local garrison, recruit academy, frontier hospital, regional academy, fusion reactors, mining network, and they start with an administration complex. Generally, they also start with 6 city districts as well. Moving on, the United Congress of Banea. They start off with the planet of Banea in the Banea system. And again, we see that they are a kind of generic empire that does not have any special buildings, therefore they have one of each of the basic buildings, 6 city districts. They also have 20 pops. All of the pops are from the Banean species, and they also have some defensive armies as well. Then we have the Trabe Alliance. They start in the Trabe system. They also start, just like the other generic empires, they start with 3 patrol frigate class vessels. Theirs happens to look like this. They use the same ship set as the Kazon. So, Trabe Prime, we see that there are 22 pops. 15 of which are Trabe, 7 of which are Kazon. This is because of in the lore in Star Trek Voyager, we know that the Trabe and the Kazon have a close political relations, and that the Trabe actually took the Kazon to be kind of slaves at one point before the Kazon rebelled, which is why they also have very similar technology. Again, this is more of a generic empire, so we see that they have 1 of each of the base buildings built. They also have a policing system. This is to help with those trade pops, and they have 6 city districts as well. Continuing on from the Trabe, we see the next ones are the Kazon. So of course, as I just said, the Kazon are very closely related to the Trabe in the sense, in the political sense, but they are also a generic empire. So you have 1 of each of the base buildings, and we have 6 city districts. In terms of population, we have 20 Kazon pops. There are no Trabe on this planet whatsoever, and they also start with defensive armies. Just like every other generic empire, they have the 3 patrol frigates, and it looks exactly the same as the Trabe at the moment as well. Continuing on, we have the Vidiians. So the Vidiians start in the Via system, and they start with the Vidiian planet. So again, they have some defensive armies, they have 20 Vidiian pops, and they start with only the base buildings in the game, as well as 6 city districts as well. Again, they have 3 patrol frigates. Their patrol frigates look like this. Moving on, the next one we have is in the deep space system. So the Voth Theocracy, this is a fallen empire, or an unawakened empire, depending on how you would like to call them, that we see in Star Trek Voyager. So all of the unawakened empires, of course, have a very kind of advanced start, and in fact, as a player, you cannot play one of the unawakened empires yet. They have so theirs is the city ship. They do not have a planet. They start with several unique buildings. So for example, the city ship main bridge. They also have 1 ship barracks and 1 city ship deflector array. They have an affluent center, 2 of them. There's a nutritionment center. There's a dimensional fabricator, class 4 singularity, some sky domes which provide housing and amenities, the master archive for research, and the auto forge for alloys. They start with 60 pops, all of whom are Voth pops, and there are no defensive armies whatsoever on the city ship either. Within kind of the deep space system, if you would like to call it that, we do have an outpost, a starbase here. It looks like this. And we also have 3 fleets, which are at about 250 fleet power for those 2, and 176 fleet power for these. These have a list, or a wider range of ships, because of course they have access to more technology. So for example, this is the equivalent of a patrol frigate for the Voth. And these are all interdictors in this fleet. Here we have a somewhat larger ship. This is called the Assault Vessel, which I believe is similar to the Destroyer. And here we have some flagships. So these are the largest vessel. So continuing on, we then have the Cravic and the Pralor. The Cravic and the Pralor are a little bit unique within Star Trek New Horizons, in the sense that you can sometimes play them, and it depends on the DLC you have. If you have the Synthetic Dawn DLC, you will have access and will be able to play the Pralor, the Cravic and the Pralor empires. Otherwise, these will be non-playable species. The Cravic and the Pralor are made up of robotic pops. So on Cravica, the homeworld of the Cravic, we see that there are 27 Cravic APU. APU stands for Automated Personnel Units. They also start with most of the same base buildings. There is also an assembly yard, which is the equivalent of the hospital, and they start with 2 mining networks instead of just 1. Also, instead of a monument that you would get in the other empires, you have an uplink node, which connects all of the pops together. They also start with 6 city districts. As I said, all of the pops are Cravic APU units, the automated personnel units, and there are no defensive armies. They also start with 3 patrol frigates, which look like this, and their starbase, which looks like this. The Pralor are almost exactly the same, so they also start with 27 Pralor automated personnel units, no defensive armies. All of them are Pralor, and they start with the exact same buildings as the Cravic as well. So with the hospital replacement called the Assembly Yard, the monument replacement called the Uplink Node, and 2 mining networks instead of just 1. Continuing on, we have the Malon Sanctity, which is the first empire we're going to talk about that starts with more than 1 system. So they have the Melonus, which is a colony planet with 5 pops. It starts with the field headquarters, fusion reactors, large-scale hydroponics fields, and the mining network. So these are 1 each of the base resource producing buildings. All of the pops here are Malon, and there are 2 defensive armies on this planet. Moving to the Nelid system, we have Malon Prime. The Malon Prime is the homeworld of the Malon. As we can see here, there are 20 Malon pops, and there are many defensive armies. And also, they start with the basic buildings that all generic empires start with, and the 6 city districts as well. One small difference is that they have 4 patrol frigates rather than just 3, and these are waste extraction units, which look like this. Next we have the Krenim, which is definitely a multi-system empire. The Krenim have 1, 2, 3 colonies, and also have the Krenim Prime homeworld in the Krenim system. They also start with some time crystals. The Krenim Empire has some unique technology which depend on time crystals. For example, the time ship relativity that we see in Star Trek Voyager, which has also been included in the game. So you do have access always to 1 time crystal in the Krenim system. On Krenim Prime, there are 20 Krenim pops. We also see that the buildings are the same for all generic empires, although there do happen to be 2 recruit academies at the moment. There are 6 city districts. All of the pops are Krenim, and there are defensive armies. Additionally, there are 6 patrol frigates for the Krenim. They look like this. The next empire is the Hazari. The Hazari Tuatara start in the Hazar system. They are a single system empire, and they only have Hazar. So there are 20 pops that start on Hazar. They do have some defensive armies. All of the pops are Hazari. And for the planets, from the planetary summary, we see that all of the buildings are the generic ones, and we have 6 city districts as well. They start with 3 patrol frigates. Their patrol frigates look like this. There is also the Devor Imperium. The Devor Imperium start in the Devor system. They start on the planet Devor. They have the basic buildings that all generic empires have. They also have 6 city districts. There are 20 pops. They are all Devor. There are also some defensive armies here as well. And they also start with 3 patrol frigates, which look like this. Continuing on, we have the Borg, who start in Unicomplex 01, in the Unicomplex 1 system as well. The Borg start with 5, well, if you play the Borg, you start with 2 Unicomplex segments. The Borg, however, if controlled by the AI, start with 5 Unicomplex segments. The Unicomplex 1 hub has 35 pops, no defensive armies. All of the pops are original Borg pops, though not assimilated, and there are many unique buildings that the Borg have. For more information about the Borg unique buildings that they have, please see the tutorial video about Borg buildings. Moving on, there's the 1 Alpha segment. They have 19 Borg pops and a selection of buildings. 1 Beta, 1 Gamma, and 1 Delta are also the same. They have the same selection of Borg buildings. They have 6 drone hives, which are the equivalent of city districts, 19 pops, and no defensive armies. The Borg also start with 4 probe vessels, which are the Borg equivalent of patrol frigates, and they look like this. Moving on, there are the El-Aurians, the El-Aurian Auditorium. They start in the El-Auria system, and they start with 1 planet. There are 6 pops on El-Auria to begin with, and there's only the administration complex and the large-scale hydroponics fields. Also, there is 1 city district that has been built. The El-Aurians start with 3 patrol frigates, which look like this. The next empire is the Turei Commonwealth. They start in the Turei system with 3 patrol frigates. They look like this. And they also start with the planet of Turei Prime, which has the basic buildings and 6 city districts. Additionally, there are 20 Turei pops, and there are some defensive armies there as well. Next, we have the Norcadian Harmony. The Norcadian Harmony starts in the Norcadia system, and they start with 3 patrol frigates, which look like this. Additionally, they start with Norcadia Prime. There are 23 Norcadian pops, no defensive armies. Also, they have a selection of the base buildings. However, they do also have some unique buildings, such as the main Tsunkatsuke Stadium. There is also a banking complex, and they have the Tsunkatse Arena as well. Additionally, they start with 7 city districts. There are no defensive armies on Norcadia Prime. Continuing on, there is the Brunal system and the Brunali Empire. The Brunal system, or the Brunal Prime planet, also has a base selection, or a selection of the base buildings in the game and 6 city districts because it is more generic. There are 20 Brunali pops, and there are defensive armies here. They also start with 3 patrol frigates, which look like this. Continuing on, we have the Hirogen Hunters. The Hirogen Hunters start here in the Idrin star system. Rather than starting on a planet, they start on a starbase called Idrin's Lodge, which has 22 pops. There are 2 defensive armies here. There are 22 Hirogen pops, and they have a selection of buildings. Because they are on a starbase, these buildings are somewhat different. For example, they have a temporal communications center and an Alpha Hunter Dome, which is unique to the Hirogen species. They also start with 6 residential area districts. This is the equivalent of the city districts. Continuing on, we then have the Kobali Republic. They start in here in the Coal system, and on Kobali Prime, we have 20 Kobali pops, the basic selection of buildings, 6 city districts, and also some defensive armies here, and they also start with 3 patrol frigates that look like this.
Well guys, thanks for joining us. If you haven't already, make sure you give the video a big thumbs up and subscribe to both of our channels. If you find you're struggling at all with Star Trek New Horizons, then please do check out our tips, tricks and tutorials playlist linked in the description below and at the end of this video.
We also have a Discord server we call The Collective. We discuss everything from these videos to Star Trek in general to what we're having for Sunday lunch. We also make our announcements there as well and organise multiplayer games that you can play with us. You can join our collective using the link in the description below.
The collective must grow.
Alright, that's it from us for now.
See you next time.
Make it so.